let me. So can you see the screen? Okay, good. Because this afternoon, darn, it was sunny out there. And we really had to close the shade so you could actually see things. Well, welcome to our Wills versus Trust seminar. I'm Bob Ross from Ross Estate Planning. You all got to meet my lovely wife as you came in. She was our greeter. And she handed you both a packet and an evaluation form. What I would like you to do when we're done is fill out this evaluation form and hand it to her. It helps us know, are these programs helpful to you? Are there other topics you would like us to present? Other questions that you have or other groups you'd like us to present to? I very much enjoy getting up here and speaking. Those of you that know me know that well. I'm also a choir director at St. Joe's Church, so yes, I'm used to being up in front of large groups of folks. So let's get started, and with what I'd like to show you is in this folder there's a couple of things to look at, and on the, I believe they've got it on the right-hand side. You'll see a pyramid, but right behind that is something called How to Select Your Healthcare Agent. And then there's two forms behind that. You just pull those out because I will refer to those shortly. And when I give these presentations, even though this is will versus trust, there's a couple of things that you need to be aware of before we even get to a will or a trust. Folks think of wills and trusts typically as documents upon your death. Well, let's deal with some things that you need while you're still here. And I call it the 3 most important things you need to deal with right now. And the first thing is get organized. You'll see that's up on the screen. The second thing we'll talk about is healthcare power of attorney. And the third thing is a financial power of attorney. Those are the 3 critical things you need to do today. And so let's talk about getting organized. That's become so much more important. Especially for those folks that have retired here to Door County. They have brought accounts with them, but many of them have left accounts where they have retired from. I've got bankers here. I'm sure you're dealing with folks who have assets in lots of other places. You're seeing checks written from probably all 50 different states. Everybody wants to own a piece of a rock. And we truly do have almost all 50 states represented here in Door County. So getting organized is so important. And I like to think about it. Why do those things happen? Well, we're not communicating. We can't find things. And that inability to find things, I can tell you from personal experience, is difficult. My longest running trust administration went 9 years. Why did it take so long? Because the family kept finding things. The last thing they found was they were going to do an auction, and they were going to sell some of this fellow's furniture. And so they were going through a dresser. And they opened up the 3rd drawer and found $37,000 of war bonds. Now, there are some folks in here who might remember or know what a war bond is. They're basically the predecessors to E-bonds. And these weren't even in his name. They were in his aunt's name. And she passed away back in 1967. And they were made payable on death to him, but we had no idea who she was, where she died, whether she was alive or dead. We figured she was dead because when our client died, he was 97. That's kind of like the old joke when Dad goes in to talk to the doctor, and the doctor says, "What did your father die of?" And he says, "Did I say my father died?" And then he says, "Well, what did your grandfather die of?" "Did I say my grandfather died?" There's longevity. I'm dealing with several clients who are upwards in their 90s, and we're doing planning for that. But getting organized, redundant accounts. I can't tell you the number of times I sit down with folks and I say, "Why do you have accounts in so many places?" Well, we don't want to have all of our eggs in one basket. So I start looking at the baskets, and I find all the baskets are doing exactly the same thing. Nobody is giving them good advice. Nobody can see everything to help them. So the more I call that consolidating things so you get less and less 1099, you will make your life easier. You will also make your accountant's life easier. And an example of that is stock. And I'm going to use Bay Lake Bank as an example. That's a stock many people in Door County have. And if you've owned it for a while, has anybody seen stock splits? Sure. Bay Lake Bank stock has split multiple times. And when it split, you actually got new certificates. Well, there's been a number of cases where somebody has died, and I would call the bank and say, how many shares do they have? And the bank would tell me, and then I'd gather up all the shares they could find. And very, very seldom did those two match up. So that means some pieces of paper got lost. And it is very expensive to replace just that piece of paper. Typically it costs between 1% and 3% of the value of that stock just to replace the piece of paper. So being able to consolidate things, get them into one place, get them into a broker, so that then the broker can hold them, and then when there's a split, it goes to the broker, and you don't have to worry about it. Or anybody ever own AT&T stock? And I don't want to show a hand, but if you did, you know what happened to Ma Bell many years ago, right? They broke it up into 9 different baby bells. And then what happened? Those baby bells started buying each other. And then they started spinning other companies off. And one of the baby bells actually bought Ma Bell back, changed her name to AT&T Wireless, and then spun it out again. There was well over 20 different companies that resulted from AT&T. And if you had all of those, try and keep track of all of that. We put a chart together at one time just so if somebody came in with some of these stocks, we could back into how much they could have and where it came from. And so consolidating things just makes life so much easier. And so how do you get organized? You know, we need to talk to people. You'll hear from me a couple of times this evening how important communication is. Talking about people. Making sure your family knows where things are. You know, have a family meeting where the kids get to see what's going on. Who are your advisors? Where are your important pieces of paper? And something that, you know, I'm sure everybody is like me, you've got lots of keys. Does everybody know what each key on there does? I can tell you I don't. There's been a couple of different houses. Matter of fact, I play cards in the evening, and we couldn't get in one time, so I just started pulling out my keys and trying them. One of them worked. So I could get into the building. We promptly told the owner of the building that, you know, my keys are working on your door. You might want to change it. But there's another key that I have on here that's really important. I don't know if you can see it, but if you recognize what this key is. Anchored, safety deposit box key. Exactly. But the only words on this safety deposit box key are, do not duplicate. It doesn't say where it is. It doesn't have the box number on it. So if you have a safety deposit box, one of the important pieces of information is which bank is it at, and if it's at Bay Lake Bank, which branch, and what's the box number. And if something happens to you, does the family know where to find that key? Kind of important, because what happens if we can't find that key? You bought the box to the tune of about $200 to $300. Because can the bank get into that box without your key? The answer is no. So the only way they can get into it is they drill it. They have to hire a professional company that comes up, drills the box, and just bought it. And in this long-running administration I talked about that took 9 years, the fellow was a jeweler. Anybody know where jewelers keep all of their jewels? In safety deposit boxes. When this fellow died, we found 9 safety deposit boxes. And the only reason
See, I didn't, because I said, no, I don't know that there's one in there. And then he asked me kind of a silly question. Well, do you know the combination? Let's see, I didn't know it was there, but no, I don't know the combination. So we called my mother-in-law, and I said, Marie, what's the combination? She said, I have no idea, but I know where to find it. That dresser we gave to your daughter Holly, have her go to the third drawer, pull it all the way out, and look on the back. It's written there. And it was. And they had replenished the dresser, but never touched the back of it. So I could give that combination to the buyer. And then I said, if there's anything in there, would you call me? I never did get a call. So my assumption is it's them. But those are kind of the important things that we need to know. Where are all of these things? And today, something that is more and more and more important is passion. 10 years ago, we never even thought about passion. But today, we all have it. If you do anything online, you have a password. Or if you're like me, and I like to communicate with my kids and my grandkids, because they live a long ways away, we use something called Skype. But Skype has a password. So you need to be aware of that. And we had some fun one night. In my kitchen, we opened up Skype. We're talking to our oldest in Kentucky, and he's got 4 kids. And, grandparents, you ever try and talk to a young one? Can you keep them on the phone more than 3 seconds? No, they're too busy. They've got lots going on. But you put them in front of a camera, they'll be there for a long time. And you get to see the Easter outfits or the programs they're doing at school. And so Skype is just becoming a way we communicate today. And all I can remember my mother-in-law saying, sitting at our kitchen table, we have 4 generations all together at one time via the internet. And she said, this is free? Because it is. But we need to be aware of passwords. We are doing more and more online. I've got several friends who have not written a check in probably a couple of years. Will checkbooks be obsolete? They just may. I do a lot by check, but how long ago was it that you basically stopped getting copies of your checks every month? The bank is saying, go online and check them out. It saves them a ton of money, not having to send all of that out. But we're going to be seeing more and more of it. And how do we communicate with kids? Anybody here at Facebook? That is where everything happens with our kids. It's amazing, the technology. Cell phones, our computers. My kids will take a picture on their cell phone, and within about 3 seconds, it's posted to Facebook. They were trying to show me one day how to do that. It got kind of lost on me, but they're doing it. That's how they communicate. And something else that's become more and more and more important. Many of your kids don't have landlines anymore, do they? They've gotten rid of them. They have cell phones. But if you're like me and you tried to call your kids and leave a voice message, did any of them call you back? No. And so I asked a couple of my kids, if we call them and leave a voice message for you, why don't you call us back? Well, because we have the phone program not to ring for voice messages. So we never know you called. But if we text them, you send a text message, they respond immediately. So if you're doing those things on your cell phone, is your cell phone password protected? So we need to be thinking about this. This is the new digital age. What are all those passwords? We moved into a new office about a year ago, and my computer tech came to me and said, I need the passwords for all the programs on your computer. I said, well, that's easy, I only have a couple. I had 2 pages of them. And I was online today, I was ordering some books that I wanted to buy. Before I could buy them, they needed to know my password. I don't remember that password. So I keep a list, and I had to go over to my list, what's my password for this account? And they're all telling you password for everything. Why? Because of identity theft. And I'm going to put in a little plug for Bailey Bank and Dennis McIntosh. Hopefully you all know Dennis. He's the security officer for Bailey Bank, former chief of police here in Sturgeon Bay. But he runs a program called Identity Theft. And I've had him put it on for my folks twice already, and I'm going to do it a third time in June. It is a wonderful program. Talks about all practical ways you can help avoid identity theft. And do you think identity theft is limited to computers? Absolutely not. He says the folks that are the biggest victims of identity theft are our seniors. Why? Because we keep all that paper at home. And the smart thieves that break into the house, they don't want your jewelry and the big screen TV. They want your information. Because they can sell that and make a whole lot more money much quicker. And I just wrote a blog article called Your Medicare Card, Leave Home Without It. For those of you that have a Medicare card, right on the card it says, please keep this in your wallet. My advice is, don't keep it in your wallet. Because what is your Medicare number? It's your Social Security number. And so that's in your wallet. What else is in your wallet? Your driver's license. So if you lose your driver's license and a thief gets a hold of that, they've now got your Social Security number and your driver's license. That is everything they need to go do anything they want on the internet. So, despite the advice from the Medicare folks, don't keep your Medicare card in your wallet. Social Security Administration gives that advice, and don't keep that card in your wallet. And the question is, why don't they fix the problem? Because it is so expensive to fix. The federal government would have to change all of its programs, all insurance companies would have to change, hospitals, doctors, how are we identified today? By our Social Security number. You know, they've come a long ways. Now when you do something, what do they ask you for? The last 4 digits? So every time you run through the whole number, then you remember what the last 4 digits are. But you need to be aware of this stuff. That's all part of this new world we're living in. You know, and I have a friend of mine who I said, you know, you've got lots of passwords, because he does a lot on the computer. He runs his whole business on the computer. And I said, so if something ever happens to you, how are we going to get all of these passwords? He said, oh, that's really easy. I have them all taped right to the computer. Not necessarily the most secure place. So we need to be aware of that and deal with it. And we're going to talk about documents a little bit later about where do we keep all of those. So how do we fix some of this stuff? You know, we talk about this. We have some family meetings. Your family needs to know, who are the advisors you deal with? Who is your banker? Who is your CPA? Who is your financial advisor, your stockbroker? Who is your attorney? Who takes care of the homeowner's insurance? Because if something happens to you, you've got to make sure that home is still insured, that the cars are still insured. So who are those folks? This becomes basic information, but really important. And so you need to have all of that in one place. And then we need to talk about Legal Vault is a service that we've started using in our office. We want you to go to our website. We have a link to it so you can check it out. But basically, Legal Vault has a private side and a public side. The public side is where we keep your healthcare powers for you, so that if you're traveling, and who in Door County isn't always traveling? I mean, if you're up north, you're coming down to the big city, Sturgeon Bay. If you're in Sturgeon Bay, you're heading down to the big city of Green Bay. I mean, we're always traveling. And so if something happens to you, if you have a health care card, did you carry it with you? I know some do, because I've advised them to. Throw it in the glove compartment of your car. But for most folks, we don't carry it with us. Legal Vault provides a wallet card for you so that you can get that health care power, or the doctors can get the health care power anytime. It's available. And it's in the cloud, you know, it's online, but it's a nice private side, and you need another password. But you can store things up there. I'm a big fan of folks taking pictures, doing inventories of their homes. Well, where do you keep it? Well, you either keep it in your safety deposit box, or you need to keep it somewhere out of the house. This is just one of those services where you can keep that, and then it is available to you anytime. The other thing that we put up there is your estate planning document. So if you go to another part of this country, which a big part of Door County does this time of year, they can see their estate planning documents online. If you want to share them with family, you simply share that password with the family, then they can see those. It's just a good way of communicating. And that's how our children and our grandchildren communicate. Bought my wife an iPad for Christmas. My granddaughter, I mean, she was more excited than my wife was. She said, Grandma, here's how you do this. And she's doing all of this stuff. My wife said, slow down. I'm not used to this stuff. That's the way our kids and our grandkids are raised today. They live in the electronic age. And they have passwords, so you need to be aware of all of that digital stuff. And that I do talk about also email and online accounts and Facebook. What are those passwords? And passwords is also, for those of you that have a garage door opener, you have the keypad. What's the code? That becomes important. So this is where we talk about passing on your passwords, make sure folks know about it. So that's just part of getting organized. The second thing we want to talk about is healthcare policy. Well, let me back up. Well, we're going to talk about something called ICE. Is anybody familiar with ICE? And I don't mean the ICE outside. ICE stands for in case of emergency. Yes. And this is something that the first responders are being trained to look for. On your cell phone, you have one of the newer ones, there is an ICE contact already programmed into it. All you need to do is put a name and a phone number. Why is that important? Because if you're ever in an accident and the first responders come to find you, they are trained to look for your phone and see that there's an ICE contact, and they will call it. So you just need to program that in. If you have one of the older cell phones, you can actually program an ICE contact in there. But you need to do that. In our office, we have developed an ICE form, and you can go to our website and you can download it. We think it's just a great service. Matter of fact, I was just talking to the head of the EMT service here in Door County. I showed him the form. He liked it, and I said, where should I tell folks to put this form? And so he's talking to his various folks in his department. But right now, he said the best place he recommends is in your glove compartment. An 8.5 by 11 sheet. What's on it? Name and phone number. Who can those folks call? So that they know that your family has a heads up if you're getting transported somewhere. Wouldn't it be nice if they knew that? So you need to be aware of that. And I'm out there preaching it a lot. But let's talk about healthcare decisions. Hopefully, everybody here knows that, especially husbands and wives, and I'm going to pick on us guys, because we're the ones who are not good patients. We go to the hospital, and ladies, you call up and want to talk to the doctor and get information. And unfortunately, what are you told? They can't talk to you. And you go, but I'm his wife. And the doctor will very politely say, so, the marriage contract does not authorize spouses to get each other's medical information. That's something called HIPAA that came into play back in 2003. Actually, April of 2003 is when that came in. And what HIPAA says is your medical records are private, even between husband and wife. So if you haven't authorized somebody to make medical decisions for you, has anybody heard of Terry Scheibel? What happened there? healthcare powers for us seniors? No. They are for everybody. Because anybody know how old Carrie Shivel was when she first had the stroke that put her into a coma? She was in her mid-20s. A young lady. And that's why I say healthcare powers are not just for seniors. And for those of you that have children, what happens at the magic age of 18? They become an adult, right? Well, they're an adult, but they're most likely on your health insurance policy. But if they head off to school, and you get the call from the emergency room that says, your child is here, are they on your health insurance? And you say, well, of course they are. Why are you calling? We can't tell you. They are an adult. Their information is private. So you need to get a health care power in place for those kids. I'm on a little bit of a soapbox trying to get families to do that. So make sure you get that in place, because if you don't have that in place, who makes the decisions?
Judge.
So you need to become good friends with the judge, because they are the folks that will now be in charge of your health care. We have two wonderful judges here in Door County. I like them, they're good guys, but I don't want them making my medical decisions. I want my family doing that. I want the people I want, the people that I have talked to make those decisions for me. And now, those 3 forms I asked you to get out, the first one is, who should be my health care agent? Yep, that's it. I call in our office the decision tree. Walk through that form. That helps you decide who are the appropriate people to make those medical decisions for you. Maybe your children are a little different than mine, but they were all raised under the same roof. How did it turn out so different? Not everybody is going to be the best person to make medical decisions. In my own family, I'm the oldest of 6. There's 5 boys and my little sister. Who do you think my mother talks to every day? My little sister. Who's not on my mom's health care policy? My little sister. Why? Because we all know she cannot make those decisions for her. So we're not going to ask her to do that. And that's why we have that decision tree there. The things to look at, things to consider. And what I like folks to think about, even in this electronic age, is any of that very helpful in making medical decisions? No. You really need somebody who can get there. They just need to see so much. They need to be able to talk to doctors, to nurses, to see what's going on in the room, what's happening. They need to be available. Now, does that mean they need to be here? No. They just need to be able to get here. And what's a good test of that? If you've ever been in the hospital, who are the first people to show up? Who gets there? Those are the folks that are going to do the job, because you need somebody who will actually be there. And that's why the second 2 sheets I've given you, the one is called the 25 questions. That's our conversation starter. Those are, nobody gets up in the morning really excited to talk about making these medical decisions. They're tough, and that's why we've given you that conversation starter. Things to help you talk about this with family. Because remember, I said I was going to say communication a couple of times. This is an area where communication is absolutely critical. The people you need to talk to as husbands and wives, not only each other, it is your children, but it is also your doctors. You need to make sure that you and your doctors are singing out of the same songbook. That's the choir director in me. Make sure they're in line with what you want done. And doctors today are actually being trained to spend a little bit more time with you to find these things out. Now, we have a little bit of a problem here in Door County. We have a high turnover of doctors. Anybody else experience that besides me? The important point is, even though your doctor may not be here, your file will be. And whatever doctor picks that up can see the notes that the doctor made. And something that I want folks to do, if you have a health care power,
I am always asked, where do we put it? The first piece of advice I'm going to give you is where not to put it. Never, ever, 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 ever put it in your safety deposit box. Why? Do medical emergencies happen during banking hours? Generally not. They happen weekends and holidays when you can't get in there. So if your healthcare power is sitting in the safety deposit box, what good does it do? And it's even worse if they can't find the key and don't know where your box is. Now we have this new legal term, screwed. So you want to be careful. That's why you don't keep it there. So the question then is, where do you keep it? You make lots of copies. And you give it away like candy. You want everybody in your family to have one. You want to give one to the hospital. You want to give one to the doctor. And when you go to the doctor, you want to make sure you sit down and talk to the doctor about what your wishes are. And that's why we've given you that conversation starter. The sheet behind it is called our hospice list. If you ever need to participate in hospice, what are the things you want to have happening around you? That's why we put it in there. It's to help you talk about these kinds of things. Because the reason we don't put a lot of details in a healthcare power is because we change our minds. I mean, the things you wanted 10 years ago, are those the same things you want today? I mean, the medical changes that have happened in the last 10 years are phenomenal. It's amazing the things that they can do. I mean, my father passed away back in 1973 of a heart attack. They had no idea what open heart surgery was back then. Back in 1973, their advice for him was, go home and rest. Well, he was a type A personality. Go home and rest was not in his vocabulary. And so he had his first heart attack at 38, had his final one at age 44. Now, I'm named after my father, I look like my father, and my mother says I work like my father. So, were we all a little concerned when Bob got into his early 40s? You bet. And I'm very athletic, I'm running all the time, I play in sports. I played basketball against a few folks who run circles around me because they're better than I am. But I finally had open heart surgery back when I was 49. And this is where I thank my wife every single day. I was out running and I came home and I said, honey, I think I got a cold. You know, my chest was tight. And after the first mile or two, it went away. You know, and if you guys are like me, we are not good patients. We don't want to go to the doctor. We don't like being there. And if we go there, we're not going to remember anything they told us. So that's why we need you there. You ladies need to be there. You will remember this stuff. And thank heavens, my lovely wife is a nurse. She actually understands some of the things the doctors are talking about. And she said, you need to go in. Okay, I'll go in. Did my stress test. The doctor said, you're going in for surgery, like right now. And I did, and had bypass surgery. But back when my father passed away, that was not an option. Didn't exist. And so the medical world is just coming up with things all the time. The problem we have in the medical world today is they come up with all these new techniques, but they don't come up with at all times with the wisdom of the individual. And let me give you just a little example of where we have a problem today. For our seniors, many slip and fall and break their desk. You would think it's pretty much a no-brainer that you go in and fix it, right?
have multiple people living as your healthcare agent? The answer is yes. It's not all at the same time. You cannot have decision by committee with healthcare policy. You need to name a person and then some backup. So if one's not available, you can use the next. But you cannot have group decisions with healthcare policy. You can put in there that you want the family to talk to each other, but
administrator of your estate? Where do you want your personal things to go? You know, I find that today to be more what folks argue about than the money. They argue about the personal stuff. And can you put a list of your personal things in your will and say where you want them to go? Of course you can. Do I recommend it? No. And the reason I don't is because if you have that list in your will, when we submit that will to the probate judge, the judge will require I get an appraisal on each and every item. And sometimes the appraisal costs more than that item is worth. So how do we fix that? Well, in your will, we can put a reference to a list that you prepare. And in the will we say, if I've made a list, signed and dated it, the personal representative should honor it. And that can happen then separately. And I don't have to involve the probate court in that. And then you can change that list without having to go through the formalities of a will. So it's a pretty nice way to deal with things. And a lot of folks ask me about a will, what does all of this cost? And so when you go through probate, in Wisconsin, the person that's in charge of your estate, and we call them the personal representative. In Wisconsin, by law, 2% is the amount they're entitled to. And then attorneys are typically between 2 and 3%. And then there's administrative costs. You know, we still have to pay bills, still got to file tax returns, got to get appraisals on things, you know, have to do inventories. So there's a lot of work, administrative work that needs to happen, and that typically runs about 1%. Now you also need to understand that a will doesn't mean anything until you are dead. I have had folks who have come in and said, I want to put funeral instructions in the will. Okay, we can do that, but when do we usually read the will? After the funeral, right? If we did something different, that's not an area where we get do-overs. You know, what happened happened. So if there's instructions in the will, there's really a better place to put them. I have other folks who come in and say, I'd like to put instructions in there about how I want to be cared for if I become incapacitated. Can I put them in the will? I go, sure, but remember, nobody looks at that will until you're dead. So it's kind of a waste of paper. And also, I've gotten calls from customer service and tellers at the banks when one of the kids is there with the will saying they're named the administrator. Will I please instruct the bank to let them sign checks? So I have